Hello everyone, and welcome to another process video today where I'm going to share with you scrapbook layout and also 6 cards that I've made using this one stencil. This is the Skylark stencil and it's a special that's currently on. It started on 1st of December and it is finishing at the end of January. And you can see this has been very well loved. It was used at an in-person workshop and all the ladies were doing their stenciling, and whenever you use a red or a pink, a bright pink, it will stain the stencils. It's hard to get the stain out, but it doesn't mean that the stencil can no longer be used. Dark blue tends to do this a little bit as well as a dark purple, but this has been well and truly washed. It is a little bit stained, but it won't affect how the inks are blending through it. I'm going to use Rosy and Limeade, and I'm going to ink up one 12 by 12 piece of White Daisy cardstock. And to do that, because the stencils themselves are 12 by 12, they fit perfectly over top of a piece of White Daisy. So I need to secure my stencil to my piece of paper. And I just use the blue painter's tape for this. And I'm being fairly generous because I don't want my stencil to move at all. And I don't want to rip off any part of this White Daisy, even though I'm going to be cutting into this piece. Because when you ink this up, and you'll see that once I'm done, there's actually a border all the way around the outside of this, so the stencil doesn't go all the way to the 12-inch part. So what I'm going to do is just put some painter's tape on the stencil part here and secure it at the back so it doesn't move at the top. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom as well. So I've got that all secured. I'm going to move my Versamat out of the way for now. And what I'm going to do on camera for you today is do some stenciling with this using Limeade. And I'm using 2 colours. I wanted to just concentrate on the leaf area here. So you can see the colour is going through. I don't necessarily have to ink this up all the time. I don't want it to be one solid colour. I want there to be light and shade. So I'm just going over where the leaf section is, and if I go a little bit onto the florals, it really doesn't matter. I'm not really too worried if I manage to get some green onto the floral parts, or vice versa when I come to do the rosy section, if I get some of that pink into the leaves. I want this to be a fairly organic sort of look. It doesn't have to be totally perfect. There's a lot of floral elements here to try and mask all of those off individually, and I really don't think it's worth the time to do that. I'm not pressing too hard with my brush because I want a fairly light hand. You can see I'm getting light and shade here, and I think that provides like a texture type element to this. So I think I've got all my Limeade pieces done here. So I'm just going to put that aside and come in with Rosy ink. And with the Rosy ink, I'll just close the ink pad up again so you can see them side by side. But you can see Limeade is a lighter tone, Rosy ink is a lot more deeper in colour. And because I'm going for a softer look, I don't want to go straight in with my Rosy. So what I'm going to do is ink this up, tap it off onto some scratch paper, and then go in with the Rosy with a very light hand. And this is where I start to pick up that I've missed some leaves. So it's funny how you can look at something and you think you've got them all, and then you start doing the next colour and it's quite easy to go in and touch it up a little bit. Now, I'm not going to keep inking up my Rosy all the time like I was doing with Limeade. Now, sometimes with stencils, they do lift up a little bit. These pieces here are quite fine. So you want to make sure that you go in from the outer area so that you don't bend those pieces up too much. So I'm just going to keep going through and inking up all these rosy flowers. And I just want to peel back this little section just to give you a little preview. You can see that that is coming out quite light. Some of them have got more edge to them with the darker element, and that's fine because we are going to be cutting some of this up, especially for the cards, and we are going to cut into it for the scrapbook layout as well. So all I need to do is make sure that I tap off after I've inked this up onto the ink pad, and then I can just keep going, creating my floral elements. So I think I've got everything inked up here. I'm just doing a final check to make sure that there's colour coming through everywhere. And if I want to add just a little bit more, because there's ink still on these blending brushes, I can go back in with it. I don't need to really ink it up anymore. Some of them are going to be a bit darker than others. And for this project, I'm definitely trying to keep a soft pastel type look. So time for the reveal. I'm going to have a bit of a sneak peek first. I'm just loving how this is looking. It's so, so pretty. And now I just need to peel back my tape here. I'm going to do it fairly gently, even though I know I'm going to be cutting this piece down, because I don't want to tear away any of this back piece. So when you're removing tape, bring it back on itself, and that will hopefully eliminate any tearing of the paper that you've got there, instead of just pulling it straight up. So let's have a look at the finished result of all the blending. I'm loving how that's looking. It's really pretty, and you can see the touches of pink on the leaves, and I don't know if I've got any green. Oh, there's some. A little bit of green on the florals. It doesn't detract from this at all. It gives it a more organic look, even when there's a little bit more concentrated of the pink area. I love how this looks. Before I get onto the scrapbook layout, I wanted to show you what you can create from just one sheet of this with cards. So I have created 6 cards, and I do have some leftover pieces. So I'm going to bring those in and show them to you now. I've got the thin cuts that I've used here in front of me. They are in the current January-February catalogue. So the 3x3 inch photo frame. Now the 3x3 inches refers to the inside area of all of these thin cuts. This one is currently still available. These two here are on order, so they will be coming available very soon. So if you like these, keep a watch out for them. So this is the 3x3 inch postage frame, and this one is the window frame, and you can see on all of them they have a stitched element, and all of them have a stitch detail around this area, this 3x3 inch area here. And the stamp sets that I've used are this Happy Everything, which is from the November-December catalogue. That one's no longer available, but I really loved all the happies and what you can do with this. And I've also used the Dragonfly from Skylark, and that's the current special, which is where the stencil comes from. So I'll just put these aside. I'm going to leave out the thin cut that I've used for each one. So these are the first two that I created using the photo frame, the 3x3 inch photo frame. This one here has a continuous pattern. So when I cut this piece, I used the frame and I kept this inside piece with it together so that the pattern would flow through from the popped up piece on foam tape. I've got that popped up, and the piece underneath, and you can see I've done the stamping with Happy in Limeade, and then Rosy over the top with Birthday, and then black ink with the dragonflies, and I've done a panel of Limeade behind it just to make it pop. So this is the other card I made, and I haven't put the panel in behind it. I've got the stamping direct on the card base, and the decorative elements here are actually from the Happy Everything. This one has the frame also popped up on foam tape and the dragonfly coming off the edge. So it sort of gives a different look to this, and I kept this one as virtually white on white. Now the next two that I created, I'll just put these two off to the side, were with the postage frame thin cut. This one here, I've used the Limeade. Now this is the light side of Limeade. I've used the postage frame and then randomly stamped the butterfly in Limeade ink and put the Happy Birthday direct stamping over top. And this one I've used Rosy, the light side of this, and the hearts all come from the Skylark set. So that's that one here that I've fussy cut out. This one doesn't have foam tape applied to the frame, and the background piece has just been cut with white, and I've stamped the sentiment, and these little crosses here I've stamped in 3rd generation Rosy ink. So they're the cards I've created with that thin cut and my stenciled piece. And this one here, I've just done one of them. It's the 3x3 window frame, and I've cut the frame out of White Daisy, and I've used the stenciling. I've cut that down to put behind the window frame. This is similar stamping to this one here, where I've got the Happy in Limeade and the Birthday over top in Rosy, and I like having an open font like this with a solid font over the top. The next next card I created doesn't use any of these 3x3 frames. I've cut the panel down so that you get the border of the white around it, and I've stamped directly onto the stenciled piece and then fussy cut the dragonflies out. So they're the cards that I've created. If you're interested in the cutting guide for this, I've got a cutting plan and instructions on how to create all of these cards. I'll have a link to that below, and you actually get some leftover pieces of your stencils as well. There's another one of these, but I used it in a demonstration to show the ladies and it didn't end up coming home with me. But there's a cutting guide on how to get all of these frames out of it and how to put the cards all together. So now I'm going to move on to this scrapbook layout and create one with this one sheet of stenciled 12x12 paper. So this is roughly where I'm heading with the scrapbook layout. I cut 3 of the Polaroid frames out of the 12x12 piece that I inked on camera. And then I forgot to press record and went ahead and I did some stamping. You can see these little tickets here. They have been stamped onto the inside pieces from these Polaroid frames. I wanted to bring in part of this pattern and the stencil into some of these pieces that I'm using to embellish. So I'll just show you the stamp sets that I have used. Sweet Memories card making, I've used the camera and this ticket element here, and they come with thin cuts because they have the blue outlines so that you know that thin cuts come with this set. And the other one that I've used is the Sweet Memories scrapbooking. I wasn't going to purchase these 2 sets, but the more I looked at them, the more I thought how versatile they are, because they also have some very versatile dies. So with this one, there is a cute rectangle that has the beveled edges cut into it, and then this long one here that goes with captured moments. You could use that for any long sort of sentiment for a card or title as well. So that's what I look at when I'm looking at the stamp sets, how versatile the thin cuts are or the dies are for them. So these 2 here, I think I'll be able to use as a multi-purpose type die. And with this one, I love the ticket. I was drawn to the cameras. I love everything with cameras. And this one has a rectangle, the ticket, and also a shape here that coordinates with this stamp as well. That can be used standalone and with other stamp sets that are not necessarily Sweet Memories. So that's what I look at when I'm purchasing these sort of sets. I want to make sure that I get my money's worth out of them and that it's a purchase that I'm going to use over and over again. Now, I am going to do some treatments to the background, but I wanted to go through my process of how I've put this together before I actually adhere it down. I wanted to group in the elements here. So you can see the florals are stamped on the inside pieces of here. So I got 2 flowers out of each of these, 3 of the tickets. The camera, I tried stamping on this and I actually prefer the clean look to it. So I'm just making some little clusters here, and this is going to be my title. And I couldn't decide what color I was going to use. So I'll just take away the Limeade one and bring in this one here. This is Rosy, stamped directly onto one of the stencil pieces. And then I've done black, stamped onto one of the stencil pieces as well. And then I've just got plain black. So this for me was too heavy. And this one here, I didn't like black with all the black here as well. The Rosy I just found to be a bit too bright pink, seeing as everything else here is a more subdued and pastel look. So I ended up with the Limeade, and I think that works quite well. So what I'm going to do now is set this aside and I'm going to do some splattering. I'm going to put my white daisy piece in here. I've actually trimmed this to 11.5 by 11.5 inches because I'm going to put a black border all the way around the outside. And I'm going to bring in my Limeade and my Rosy inks. If you remember on the layout, my cluster elements were here, and then I've got a little floral element here. So that's where I'm going to be concentrating my splatters. So to do this, I'm just going to put some ink down on here. And then I'll put some Rosy ink down as well. I'm just going to spray these with a little bit of water. I want quite a bit of water on the Rosy one because I want that a little bit more subdued. And what I'm going to do is test this first before I go into my white daisy piece. So I'm going to use my fan brush and I'm going to go out to make this a little bit more diluted. I'm hoping you can see what I'm doing here off to the side. It's a bit hard to get my splatter box and all of this in one go. I quite like the strength of that. So before I clean my brush off, I'm going to bring in my white. So I need some splatters up on this side here, down in this corner, and also in this area. And these areas are going to give my clusters somewhere to belong because it is a fairly simple design with the 3 Polaroid frames going across. So to test my limeade, I'm taking this out, putting this piece in, and I'm going to do the same thing and bring this out a little bit, but I might need a more concentrated look. So I'll just tap that off to see the strength of the ink. That looks pretty good. So I can bring in my piece here, and then I can add some limeade to this. And using a fan brush, you can see that splatters out beautifully. You don't have to work too hard at it at all. I actually want some up in that corner there. So I can clean my brush off. I'm going to set this aside to dry a little bit because I do want to do some stamping onto this page direct as well. I have dried this off with my heat gun, and what happens when you dry off with a heat gun is that you get this little outline happening, which is a very cool effect, especially when there's quite a bit of water with the ink, and I love how that looks. Now I'm going to do a little bit of a practice here. I'm still using that same piece of scratch paper because I want to do some direct stamping onto this page. So I'm thinking to give it a lighter look, I'm going to use 2nd generation black because I don't want it to be too heavy. If you have a grey ink, you could use a grey ink, but I'm just going to stick with the black for this one. So I'm just going to move this aside. So I'm going to bring in this piece where I laid everything out. I don't know if you do this. Oops, I just bumped it everywhere, but I've still got it generally in the area that I want. I quite often dry fit on a piece of paper and then end up trimming a piece down. And this allows me to have a play with the positioning of everything. So now I just have to make sure that I've got my splatters in the right orientation. I'm going to bring in these elements and just transfer them over here just so that I can see how everything looks. And out of all the 3 by 3 inch thin cut frames that are in the current catalogue, the Polaroid frame is definitely my favourite one. So this one I had something like this. So this is just to help me position things. I'm going to turn this over so I can put my scratch piece of paper off to the side and get a nice even stamping off. So I've got my black ink, and I'm thinking I might like to put another ticket piece down here. And I can always then build my pieces according to the stamping that I've done. So I think in this area, I'm loving how that is looking, and I'm also going to put one off to the top of this camera element up here. This one down here, I'm only putting one floral element. So I'm going to put another ticket coming out of the side of this. And it's just helping make this a little bit more dimensional by having the background stamping of the same images behind the clusters. I'm going to do the same thing with the floral element here. And I might do 2 of these. And for this one, I've got one floral element coming on the photo frame. So I'm just going to do one flower. And then I'm going to bring that flower in up here as well. Then I'm going to call that quits, I think, for the background stamping. And then I'll just dry fit everything again just to see if I need to put anything else on there before I pack everything away. I'm also thinking I might do some stamping direct onto 2 of the photo frames using Remember This Moment. I used this stamp set just last week in a circle birthday layout, and I love these type of stamp sets. I think Remember, Always and Forever. I'm just fitting that on to see how I like the look of that. And then You Make Me Happy. It just adds a little bit more interest to the frames. So I'm just going to stamp these on in black, and then I'm going to attach everything to the layout and show you the finished result. I wanted to show you the final page. Everything has been adhered down. I've got a spot here for journaling and a spot up here for journaling, and I'll be able to tuck my photos underneath quite easily. All of these elements, I'll be able to slide them in so they can go on later. And I'm loving how the 2nd generation of black ink stamping with the same images. I didn't do the camera because of the solid element here. It would have been too strong, but I do love how this looks over top of the splatters here in the Limeade and the Rosy that's been watered down quite a bit, and making 3 lots of areas here. You get the triangle design, and it brings your eyes straight into the photos as well without taking away from the photos that are going to eventually be on this layout. I might put some of those Silver Bells white dots on here. Now I do have a couple of pieces left over from this. So I have a strip here. It's not a 12-inch strip, so I can make a card out of this. And I do have another element here. I could have made another frame. So I could turn this into a double page spread if I wanted to. But I just thought I would show you how nice the stenciling also looks when you use a dark background. Harbour would look lovely, as would pine as well, but it looks stunning on the black as well. So this layout here used that one sheet of 12 by 12 that I stenciled on camera with you. I got the 3 photo frames. I got some stamping done with the actual elements that I've put on here, layering the stamps over top of the stenciling. And I've got these pieces left for either a matching page to this, but I wanted this one to be a single page itself. And I think I might put this into a frame for my parents because they're about to move out of their home. So I think this might be nice for them to have. I'll have a photo of their home and then a photo of the grandchildren in here as well. I'm just going to quickly bring back the cards that I created from one sheet of the 12 by 12 stencil, and you can get all of these cards plus a little bit more because there were a few leftovers. You can achieve quite a lot with just one sheet of 12 by 12 stencil piece of paper. I love the layering on this one, and I love the cards on this, and they're using exactly the same colors. Rosy and Limeade I think work beautifully together. Thank you so much for tuning into today's video. I hope to see you next time. As always, happy crafting and bye for now.